Hi everyone, thanks for coming back for part 3. In this part, I just wanted to try to give you a little more evidence as to why I believe the Jubilee cycles are based on a 50-year cycle rather than a 49-year cycle. And for me, this all began with a study of Daniel 8, and I was trying to understand what was meant by the 2,300 days. And I had heard many different explanations about that, but nothing really made sense to me. Nothing really added up to where this made any sense until one day I finally found something that did make sense. But I just want to show you what led to my finding this particular article, which I believe solves this this riddle here about the 2,300 days. Because if you look at this in the Hebrew, it doesn't actually just say days. It actually says evenings. You can see evening here, and mornings. You see morning here. And a lot of people have interpreted this as actually being 1,150 days, which would be half of that, but that doesn't really work out with anything either or make any sense to me. So this was something I was stumped about for a really long time, and I really wanted to try to understand this. And I knew that there was something to the 2,300 evenings and mornings. I knew there had to be something about the evenings and mornings, because every other time in the book of Daniel when he talks about days, such as the 1,260 days, it's always mentioned in terms of days. It's not mentioned in terms of evenings and mornings. So I knew there had to be something different about this. So what I did is I just searched on the internet for evenings and mornings until I finally found this article, which I believe this article actually explains it. And I'll go ahead and put the link so you can read about it. But basically what it's saying is that the 2,300 evenings and mornings actually refers to the Passover. And the reason for that is if you go to Exodus 12, you'll see that in Exodus 12 the Jews were commanded to eat the Passover lamb at night. Right here it says that you're to kill it in the evening, the Passover lamb. And then after doing this part right here, it says, and they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. And then over here, if you skip down to verse 10, it says, and you shall let nothing of it remain until the morning. So this is something that the Jews did and still do every Passover. From evening to morning is when they eat the Passover lamb. So the Passover wasn't actually killed at 3 o'clock in the afternoon as is taught. I could do a whole other video about the timing of everything with the crucifixion, but it was actually killed in the evening, and then the lamb was to be eaten overnight from evening till morning. So this is something that the Jews understood, and probably still do, would understand that this is a reference to Passover, just as if someone were to say to someone in our vernacular, there will be 2,300 visions of sugar plums, someone would immediately understand that that would be talking about Christmases, because that's just something that you associate with Christmas. And so evenings and mornings would have been something that the Jews would associate with Passover. Another thing to note is that this vision actually began over here where it says, and I saw in a vision, and it came to pass when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam, and I saw in a vision, I was by the river Ulai. Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. But he did according to his will, and became great. And as I was considering, behold, a he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram that had the 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran into him in the fury of his power. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and brake his 2 horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. So this is the beginning of the vision, and this is referring to the time when Alexander the Great defeated the Persian Empire. This is the beginning of this vision. And if you notice in verse 13 where it says, "Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto the certain saint which spake, How long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice?" Well, if you look at how this is written in the Hebrew, and I've pulled it up over here, if you look at verse 13, you see that it actually says, "Until when is the vision?" So the beginning of the vision was the ram and the he-goat. The he-goat coming against the ram was the beginning of the vision. And this was the time of Alexander going against the Persian Empire. That's the beginning of the vision, and it's saying, until when is this vision? So what the person that wrote this article, what he figured out is that there's actually exactly 2,300 Passovers from the Battle of Granicus, which is the battle when Alexander the Great defeated the Persian Empire, to 1967. And I'll just show you how that works out over here. If you just use the date June 7th, let's just use that date, and then go to BC, to 334 BC, which is the date for the Battle of Granicus, and then go to June 7th of 1967. You'll see that it comes out to exactly 2,300 years. And what I noticed after I pulled this up, I noticed that apparently someone else was using this to research the exact same thing over here. And so 2,300 years, if you divide it by 50, you'll see that that's exactly 46 Jubilees from 1967, going back 2,300 years, would be exactly 46 Jubilees back to the Battle of Granicus, which is when Alexander the Great defeated the Persian Empire. And like I said, I'll put a link to this so you can read more thoroughly what it says here. But to me, this satisfies the prophecy that's talked about in Daniel 8. And if you read it more carefully, you'll see that after it talks about the 2,300 days, it goes on to say, and well, over here it says, "And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. And this is actually in the Hebrew, it's saying justified or made right. When will this sanctuary or the holy place, the Kodesh, which means holiness, or the holy place, which would be Jerusalem, when will it be justified or made right? So it's saying after 2,300 evenings and mornings, which is a metaphor for Passover. And so that works out exactly. And then if you read further down, it seems to make a distinction from the part that's up until 1967 when the sanctuary is cleansed. Then it seems to be describing a second part to this, because it goes on to say, well, first after Daniel was caused to go to sleep, and then the angel Gabriel woke him up, and then he said, behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation, for at the time appointed shall the end be. So it's like it's making a distinction for the time from the Battle of Granicus to 1967, and then the last end, which I believe is the last Jubilee of the indignation. And I believe at this point, this is now talking about the modern day ram and the modern day he-goat, which would be Iran and probably the U.S. is what I'm thinking over here. But this is talking about the last indignation. This is talking about what will take place from 1967 up until the very end. And so I'll just read it. It says, the ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Now that being broken, whereas four stood up, four kingdoms shall stand up out of that nation, but not of his power. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, so this is talking about the latter end now, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall rise up. So this is not talking about Alexander the Great any longer at this point. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power, and he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. And the vision of the evening and the morning, which was told, is true. Wherefore shut up the vision, for it shall be for many days. And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick certain days after I rose up, and did the king's business, and I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it. And so I believe this vision is being unsealed now in the last days, and I do believe this article that I had found on the Alexander prophecy, I do believe that this is the correct interpretation, because it's just too perfect and it makes too much sense to not be accurate. And I also have some more research that I actually did personally that seems to confirm this as well, but I'll have to get into that in the next video. Thanks.